In this video, we are going to explore several different final projects for this phase of the project, which is, of course, three related advertisements that have the unifying factor of a common grid. So we'll see multiple ways of handling this. In this case, our very first project here, we'll see three different ads. The concept is something about equipment, technology, about making sure your stuff is backed up, keeping your new tech new a lot longer, right? And so we have the similar elements, but not the same. We have the same essential grid layout, but the images are different. So in our case, the layout is very, very similar. The content changes, and the title and the tagline changes, but it's all related. Okay, so this is a very solid, clean, very Swiss-oriented layout. And here's our next three. And you can see as I move back and forth between them how the grid unifies the design. Notice that there's similar headlines: happier, healthier, best performance, give your ultimate workout. The idea behind active sportswear for women. So she chose an actual brand and just decided to come up with a little with a campaign that makes that exemplifies what the brand is about. Simple grid, but it works very, very clean and very nice. Here's a slightly more complex layout using, and I don't know if this is a real brand or not, but the band is Focused Space, and there's these different bags I guess they make. So I don't know, again, if this is something that exists or not. Some of the layouts the images look like they've been either superimposed and or highlighted in some way. So the idea is that this person has chosen to kick back the graphic and open up the product and exemplified it a little bit more. Now, I think it's a really, really nice campaign. The the bag is called the Silo, the bag is called the Ivy League, the bag is called the Bureau. It's very lifestyle oriented, and so it just holds together very nicely. The black background. The grid is very simple, large spatial zone for one image. Okay, so it totally works, right? The logo tends to move back and forth, but it's always at the top. Sorry, keep going. So it's centered right and left, right? Then look where the text goes. It's on the lower right, lower left, lower right. Okay, so again, a lot of consistency, and but not repetition, right? They're similar. Okay, so our next project, this person has chosen to create a document, which is, I always think that's a good idea. I don't require it. Maybe I should. But, everything's put together in a PDF document with the title page. And here we can see the grid very clearly, right? It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 by 3 grid. And the grid is visible because the image has been broken up by the grid, so it's a visible grid. And lots of nice negative space. Here's the grid itself. Notice that there's margins around the outside, right? And then there's the 3 column and the 5 row. And so the grid for the text, not necessary. It's clear that it aligns along the bottom of the module and along the top. That's all that you really need. it's an active grid, right? So everything is determined. Now here the person has decided to split that and use an alignment internally. And does that make it an inactive grid? Not really. In some ways, you might say it does, but in actuality, the design dictates that something happened there. And so, if you need to break it slightly to do that, then I'm fine with that. And so, you can see the grid between the three ads, right? So, there's the 1, there's the 2, and there's the 3. So, nice clean typeface that is very indicative of the style of the shoe. It's a very clean, very modern shoe, and that typeface emphasizes that. There's always a small little shoe with the logo, I mean, with the name of the company, the website. Okay, so lots of different ways to handle that. Okay, nice, clean, formal grid. This grid is a very stratified grid, and so this person has chosen to see how the margin is right in there, right? See how that works, okay? And because the grid is very stratified, she was able to use very thin columns of text as well as multiple modules to create spatial zones. This is about a place. It's not about a product, but it's fine, right? So if we look at the ad, and we can see the continuity of the grid, right? I might suggest that maybe the grid doesn't, maybe the name doesn't get smaller in the design. Here it's larger, there it gets smaller. That's a little inconsistent in my eye. But it doesn't diminish the fact that the grid itself and the layout is super, super clean and very cool. Here, I think the overall effect of that drawing is probably a little overdone here. It's nice and clean, and it's been a little bit kicked back. And in that third one, it gets really dominant. So those are some things to think about. Not to say it's not a beautiful ad. I just wanted to point out some inconsistencies that you might want to think about. Okay, so here again, a nice, clean, super simple 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is an informal grid, it looks like. Informal grid. But it's active and it's visible. And again, we can see the consistency of the design with the grid. And the headline is similar, picking up the word real for, the emphasis. But cheese, milk, and yogurt, right? And so a lot of, again, the little logo stays in the same place, okay? But still very, very nicely done, super clean, using all of the space in the ad, but some of them are knocked back, right? And so we have a sense of contrast, and it works very nicely. This is a little more edgy. And again, picking up a real brand, Billabong, and then trying to capture the essence of the brand by the images and by the headlines. And so we can see here, they started to use a vertical flow line between these two designs. It would have been nice to kind of see that happen in the third design. So it kind of breaks a little bit, but that's okay. It still uses the grid. It still feels very contiguous. The type treatment is nice and clean. Here again, these two designs feel like they were really thought through. This one feels like she was running out of steam. The text gets a little bit smaller. The graphic becomes a little bit more pronounced, a little more white space. This one not so much, right? So still very nice sequence, very nice campaign with a lot of continuity. Here's another design where the person has created a document. Neat little graphic that kind of picks up what's going on in her ads. And here again, using a formal grid that is very stratified. You can see the module size, giving her a lot of opportunities to play with space And so this, I think, is a really good example. Here's the grid of how to handle a highly stratified grid. Gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's also a little more challenging to work with, right? Because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. In this case here, she chose to stick with a very almost identical layout from these three. And so again, it's viable. It's not like you can't do this. In this case here, changing the color palette, changing the imagery, and changing the headline slightly, right? Necklace, bracelet, ring. Okay, so whatever it is, it's something with a conscious. So that is the continuity factor with the headline. And so again, I don't know if that's a real brand, Birdstone, but it's a cool brand. And so she has chosen, I think that's it, right? Yeah, so that's the end of this video. Again, I'm just going to go backwards quickly through these designs so you can kind of see some of the continuity that's been going on between three ads. Okay. Okay, so that should give you a good idea of how you can approach this project. Lots and lots and lots of possibilities, so have some fun.